Hi guys, I am Vitold and this topic is not about complaining about Yamaha Tracer 9 or damaging its pretty good image, but instead it is to list all the things and areas that I believe may not suit some of you guys in the long run if you are considering to buy a Tracer. And note that this is a part of my series of top reasons to buy and top reasons why anybody might want to avoid. The reasons to avoid don't have to be deal breakers and they do not necessarily need to apply to every single rider out there, including myself. And also, I suggest that you first check that video, which is linked in the description, which is listing all the good points, all the reasons to buy it, and then proceed back here with this one so that you are then absolutely certain that the reason for making this video is to give you as clear as possible of a look at the matter, and a very important choice, and not just to complain about a motorcycle. That's a lot of cash we're talking about here, and so I believe that it can be absolutely crucial to make an informed decision and not to regret it later. So let's proceed and start with the first reason why you may not be that excited about the Tracer. However, it includes a solution as well, so we are starting with kind of a soft point, but even more annoying, as you will see. I'm talking about the windshield, and I've been riding a Tracer 9 in a GT version, and its windshield is pretty much useless, and sometimes it does more harm than good, as it generates a lot of turbulences and it causes your helmet to, first of all, shake, and second of all, it makes the experience much more loud because of the wind slapping your helmet. It's like being hit in the face. I am 183 centimeters tall, or 6 feet tall, and I know that I'm not alone in my crusade of blaming Yamaha of screwing things up with the design of this Tracer's windshield. Now, the positive side of this problem, if I may put it this way, is that you may remove this windshield, just throw it to the rubbish and get yourself an aftermarket one. That will just work. That is going to cost you additionally, but you will likely have the problem fixed. And let me just mention that the windshield is responsible for a rather important aspect of riding a motorcycle like a Tracer that can be used on longer trips. And we also know that we can fix it ourselves. And here comes an even more annoying part, is look, I am speculating that Yamaha was and still is aware of the problem. And this is because on their list of accessories that you have to pay for extra, for a Tracer, they not only have another windshield, but also deflectors that you may attach to the standard windshield simply to deal with the buffeting, this vibrating, this turbulences more successfully. So, if they know that the one that they put on every Tracer GT is crap, why don't they just put the working one on it instead of demanding more money for fixing that? The second reason that may actually cause enough annoyance for you to look elsewhere may be, alright, you may also just get used to it. It's technically not as harmful as some other reasons to come further on the list. The second one is that it vibrates and sounds like it's choking and about to die when setting off, pretty much every time and only then. That is the moment when you are still stationary, so you're not moving, you have the clutch pulled in, you release the clutch, it starts grabbing, and you start moving forward, adding some throttle. When the bike starts moving forward, this behavior is present at that moment, and it makes an impression as if you are either releasing the clutch too quickly or not applying enough throttle and there is a risk of engine dying on you. It is usually not. My guess is that this is likely a clutch issue and there is probably something improperly balanced in there. Now, this doesn't affect the performance. That's worth mentioning. It doesn't mean that you are doing something wrong, even though generally this would be a sign of doing something wrong. So at the same time, you actually won't know if you are doing anything wrong, if you're really working the clutch with the throttle in the wrong way and the bike is about to actually die or not. That may be a problem, but the real issue that I'm having with it is that it causes uncertainty. I know that there are reports about it from users, and thankfully it's not a big deal if you manage to get used to it. So let's call it in the end just the beauty of this species. By the way, the bike that I was riding was a brand new, few weeks old Tracer 9, just stated for the record. Now let's move to the third one, which was one of the probably two biggest question marks for me, despite really being absolutely positively surprised by the whole bike. It's really great. I really enjoyed it. But this one, thank God, can be fixed, the third point, if you decide to use some cash. So either you stick all that cash into the back pockets of your pants and then sit on a bike, or you've got to replace the seat. Yeah, so I had two issues with the seat on a Tracer, and I wouldn't be able actually to live with it myself, I think, in the long run. Be warned that this may be the next thing to replace after the windshield. There are two aspects. One is simple and one that is pretty crazy. I've never experienced it in any other motorcycle so far. The first one is that the seat is simply very hard, and as if there was pretty much no cushioning at all, even though it looks visually pretty soft. It is not as soft as it seems. If you don't like to sit directly on something made of metal or wood, as a general rule, there are high chances that your butt will also not like the standard seat. Then if you are below 1 meter and 90 centimeters tall, or you don't have legs that are as long as Gal Gadot's, she's an actress, just to clarify for those who aren't familiar with today's stars. So the challenge here is that the seat is unusually wide in the front part, so naturally, if you haven't given birth to triplets, especially before or more, you will have to spread your legs very far to the sides to support yourself when stopping at the traffic light, for example. If you don't, and I tried not doing that, then you are asking for other kind of trouble, as the edges of this hard seat, keep that in mind, it's pretty hard, it will start hurting your inner thighs and you won't be able to walk later. Now, if you are not tall enough to spread your legs comfortably, you will have to do it uncomfortably. And note that the further you reach, also, if you decide to go with that direction still, if you've got longer legs, the less grip you have. And this, you know pretty much what it means. It means slipping and falling on the ground. So there you have it. Save up for an aftermarket seat if you're willing to get a Tracer. And what a surprise that Yamaha offers. Check this out. A comfortable seat for over 200 euros. It's a bit like selling you a phone without a charger, or a loaf of bread without butter. And maybe the bad example with the butter. The fourth point on the list stands kind of in opposition to what I usually was mentioning when reviewing adventure motorcycles, even though it's not an adventure motorcycle, this one. Some of those beasts may simply be too big for some riders, but the point is that here in the case of Tracer 9, it may actually be too small and too cramped for taller riders. And I felt that the front part of the bike, the fairing area that this stupid windshield is attached to, it is quite close to the rider when sitting on a bike, so it seems like you're having it in your face. You could feel a little bit cramped there if you are taller than me, and especially if you are having long legs, as even I had an issue there. Take a look at how much I had to flex my foot to get over the brake lever. This was really uncomfortable, and still, I mentioned that foot pegs. Did I mention that foot pegs are adjustable? Anyway, I mentioned that foot pegs are adjustable, and I asked you guys in my previous video with my full review of this Tracer 9 GT in which position those foot pegs were, and I got two kinds of answers: in taller position and in lower position. So we still don't know, and I haven't managed to go to Yamaha during all that time because it's winter here and salespeople are hibernated as well. And anyway, if you cannot ride a Tracer before buying it, definitely at least please sit on it and check how you feel with the levers, and make sure that the foot pegs are in the position that suits you most, and then judge the bike. See if you can fit or if you need some bigger motorcycle. The second thing is about the knee angle. Handlebar is fine. It is not too wide, but also not too narrow for a non-adventure type of motorcycle. Keep that in mind. It might look like a more adventure motorcycle, but it's not. It's a fully street bike. Fifth point, and beware. If you decide to go with the Tracer 9, I strongly suggest a lot of caution so that you don't get carried away in terms of slow maneuvering. The whole bike feels so light and so great that this may encourage you to push, and that's going to be a disadvantage, because there are other bikes that feel light and they don't have a tendency of putting you in trouble, but this can. Now, this might encourage you to push yourselves and the whole bike to the limits a little bit too quickly. it has a tendency of not giving you that good feedback when leaning left and right. And I don't think I have experienced it on such a large scale before, but it's here. So let's say that you want to make a U-turn and it starts to feel so easy, so encouraging, and it will feel that easy. So you increase the lean angle and suddenly you're on the ground damaging your tracer and your legs. My point is that the bike can be misleading a little bit in not letting you know how much further you and it can go. And also it requires quite a bit of corrections also at speed, at higher speeds when leaning into the corners, exactly for the same reason. It is sometimes hard to feel what exactly is going on with it. Current BMWs and Ducatis, they don't present this behavior, but here you'll have to deal with it. It's not a disadvantage necessarily, or it might not be exactly a disadvantage, but it is a very specific behavior that you need to adapt to. If you don't, you might get in trouble. And that's why I suggest taking it very, very easy in the beginning before you actually learn fully the bike. Sixth reason for which you may really, and I mean really, want to avoid tracer could actually be a deal breaker for me myself. And that's why I put it here as a devilish sixth point. Out of all things, one would be hard to fix, and for that reason it could be a deal breaker, I think. Just look at the bike from the front after switching the regular light on. Those LED stripes on the top are daytime running lights, and I would say that they're basically useless in any motorcycle, as nobody can see them in traffic. So I wouldn't use them, but switch at least to a low beam to be seen, like that's the minimum. And that's how the bike looks. Only one lamp is working when you switch the lights on. The thing is that there are two lamps and one just stays off. Look how stupid that looks. Now imagine stopping a traffic light and having people tell you that, boy, they saw you in the rear mirror and your light died, and so you go, boy, fix it. Now explain to everybody that this is a design and there are two lamps, but for unknown to you reasons, one is supposed to give light and the other one is not. The other one is in fact high beam, because the manufacturers of this Yamaha had forgotten that there are technical possibilities likely of having a low beam and high beam in an LED lamp, in one LED lamp, like here and here at the same time. I hate that. I don't accept that from a design point of view, and also from a safety perspective. I don't think I could live with that. In the seventh reason I've got to mention that this is a good looking motorcycle overall, in my opinion. Of course, not from the front when the lights are on, and it also does so many things so well. But its build quality and the feeling of quality isn't like in motorcycles of premium manufacturers. That's why it's cheaper. You can see that it is a Japanese motorcycle based on that. Switches are a bit weird, they are not really consistent with each other. The plastic that they are made of is the same as in all other Japanese motorcycles since 2005. And even though it isn't terrible, it is maybe not even good enough for this kind of money. The area around the windshield says cheap, 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 and that's what you see constantly when riding the traces. It may be an area for future modification. And it may also not be the best thought out, with the indicator switches being flimsy and hidden in some hole that makes first finding that switch with a finger and then accessing that spot out there pretty difficult. So nah, that's not the strongest part of it. It shouldn't be a deal breaker, but it's worse than, for example, Ducati, which in turn is, in my opinion, worse in this area than BMW. But hey, there are reasons why Yamaha is cheaper, or it might be cheaper, and this might be one of them. That's where you've got it. Let's quickly move to the related topic in the eighth point, and the weird instrument panel that I am actually not a fan of. It is two TFT screens, each being a size of 3.5 inches, and well, it looks like a face of a big fly. And as someone brilliantly mentioned in the comments of my previous video, in the honest review of this tracer, once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Yeah, that is original, but it may be painful to some of you guys. It's painful to me, and if that's something that will be bothering you every day and you will want to at some point just freaking punch that panel, then either remove it completely. I'm not sure if that's technically possible and if the bike would still work, or just look for another bike. I think I would add some white plastic elements below in the shape of a Nike logo to make this beautiful fly look like it's smiling to me instead of just, you know, staring all the time with a surprise, and that should do it. Ninth reason for considering to skip Yamaha Tracer 9 for me personally would be that even though it's got good reviews and everybody seems to claim that Tracer has been having a good reliability record, this fucker died on me right before I rode in front of the camera. So I set off, I rode behind the camera making a U-turn, pulling slightly catch, working with clutch to be able to control the bike better at 1 km/h speed. I made it, I pointed straight forward and the bike died. I started to release the clutch fully. The bike didn't stop, I was still rolling. The bike rolled in front of you just like that with the engine dead. Maybe some engine firing disorder, maybe it was some mood, or sometimes when you try to, when you try to swallow something like fuel, maybe it goes into the wrong, sorry for that if you heard something. It might go into the wrong part of your throat and you choke. Perhaps that is what happened. However, I don't think it happened on many other bikes to me. I think it happened on a V-Strom 1000 a few times, just, randomly in traffic. I think it's some kind of a firing, or it might be some kind of firing disorder. Anyway, it happened here. 3 conclusions. 1, it shouldn't have happened. 2, the bike started just fine after it. 3, I am still upset with it, as those kinds of behavior, they can stay in your head for a very, very long time, and then you are just always wondering when it is going to happen again. That's not cool, and let me know if that ever happened to you guys on the Tracer 9. And now, since they almost got personal, let me tell you about the 10th reason why you might not want to go with the Tracer and instead choose another bike, since we go just like crazy with it. And to me, this today would be a valid reason, which is that you cannot equip this bike with keyless access still now in 2022. This is when I am recording this video, and perhaps afterwards, with the next model year or in a few years, Yamaha will update the Tracer. But so far, with the newest version of it, it cannot have it, and I think it's a shame, because this is probably right next to cornering ABS, traction control, tire pressure monitoring system, probably the most useful, fun and appreciated feature on any kind of motorcycle to me. It may not be to use and to just erase this point from your list of pros and cons, but seriously, I love it in cars. I've got it in my last 3 cars, including the famous Volvo S80 V8 with a custom exhaust, and I find it absolutely satisfying and enjoyable. And on motorcycles, with us wearing thick gloves or less thick gloves, lots of gear sometimes, with many pockets, with hanging a key on your neck or putting it into a backpack or whatever one decides to put it, it is often a pain to look for it and then hide it again, just to look for it again, to hide it again, to put it there, to start the bike, to switch it off and so on, to fuel, refuel and so on. Now, some brands like BMW add keyless fuel caps that come along with this whole system, and that's absolutely brilliant. That's even more brilliant than the brilliance of the system itself. Some other brands, for example, like Ducati, don't give you that. I mean, they don't give you keyless fuel caps, but tell you to pay them extra on top of that keyless system, and they may sell you an accessory and charge double for the same in the end. Well, Yamaha gives you no choice, there's no possibility. All right, that was harsh at times, but there's nothing more I think I could add to the what could potentially be wrong about this bike list. If you've got your reasons for choosing a similar bike from any kind of competitor or a completely different bike after considering the Tracer, please share your reasons with us in the comments. And I also opened an Instagram page called The VTOL, and there you may easily talk to me directly and see some fun and less hateful episodes that happened during my rides on plenty of different motorcycles, including the Tracer, and I put a link to that in the description. Now that's it from me here, and see you in the next one. Bye.